Alright guys, so today we are talking a little bit, bring that back down a bit. We are talking a bit about 16 gigs in the Macbook Air, Macbook Pro, Mac Mini versus 8 gigs. Now, I want to first talk to you about this because I've been using the 8 gig version of the M1 Macbook Pro since it first came out. So I got it, I believe, on the 17th. And here it is right here. You guys can see it right here. I'll just spin that. That's it right here. Okay. And it's been working great. 8 gigs RAM, doing its job. So the real question is this something that you should get? Will it work? Should you spend the extra, I think it's $200 American to bump it up to 16 gigs, right? Because if you look right here, oh yes, there's another MacBook Pro, and it's the 16 gig version. And it's the one that I will be keeping. This just arrived about a week ago, and I've been playing with it. And the 8 gig is going to be going back. Now, that's the bonus right now of Christmas season, holiday season, is that it's an extended return policy. So I'm okay. I can actually return this, and I was able to actually play with it for about a month to figure out which way I want it to go. And I want to make sure you guys are aware of which way you should go and whether you should stick with the 8 gig or if you should possibly go up to the 16 gig. So we're going to talk about that right now. One of the things just to always kind of be aware of, and it's no different if you're getting, an AMD machine or an Intel machine on the Windows side, or if you're getting an Intel machine or one of the new Apple Silicon M1 computers. RAM is important. It's one of those things that your computer uses constantly, and the more of it we have, the better. And this is, we've seen, and again, I haven't had a computer that's only had 8 gigs of RAM in forever. My iMac right here, 64 gigs of RAM. My 16-inch MacBook Pro, which I had previous to this, 32 gigs of RAM. And the Apple Silicon chipset, that SoC, so system on a chip, is ridiculously efficient and utilizes that memory really, really well. But there's certain things that you have to be aware of when you're kind of making that decision. Now, number one is that 8 gigs right now on this machine, like I said, it runs really well. I've had no hiccups. I've been able to do 4K video editing. I can work with all my raw photo files, etc., and it runs super well, surprisingly well actually. But that's today. That's today. And one of the things that I realize when I used to work at Apple retail is that people that came in to buy laptops and desktops and things like that, especially Apple users, a lot of people, unlike all the YouTube people out there, have a tendency to want to keep these computers for long periods of time. So they're not going to be buying this year, or you're not going to be buying it possibly this year and replacing it 9 months from now or a year from now. Your hope is to possibly buy this and keep it for 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. And that means that memory that you buy or that computer that you buy now, we have to future-proof ourselves. And we need to make sure that this machine is going to be able to handle the memory requirements that are required of it 2 years, 5 years, 7 years down the road. Now, 7 years is long in regards to technology, but you get what I'm saying. So if you can afford the $200 without going into other reasons why, especially like spec wise, get it. It's a no-brainer. More memory is always better, and 16 gigs is the most you can put in these, so you should get 16 gigs if you can afford it. And if you can't, just realize that 8 gigs that is in this one, in regards to what I've been using, has been working really well, right? Really well. Now, the other thing that we have to be aware of, and I actually have been testing the two of these, and I did some screen recordings just so you guys could see this. So this is the 8 gig machine here, and when I got this machine a week ago, it actually just did a full restore from this computer to this computer, so they are identical to each other. There is no software that's on this that isn't on this, and vice versa. They are complete images of each other. So when we were opening up software, it's really hard to feel any difference at all. Like, the software opens up the same kind of speed. It seems to go through that software really well. There was none of this. One of them wasn't more laggy than the other. But one of the things I want you to see here is on the 8 gig version, as I started opening up software, and this is the 8 gig version here, you can see on the screenshot. As I started opening up software, and I have the activity monitor up here for memory, and as we bring it across, you'll see here, this is just running, I ran up Affinity Photo here, and you'll automatically see the swap file being used. We're up to 570 megs. Now, when we do the exact same thing on the 16 gig version, you'll actually see that as we come up here, Affinity Photo launches, same idea. And the swap drive used, if you don't know, I'll talk to you about this in a minute, 0, right? Physical memory used, 8.8 gigs, on here, 4 gigs. But because the system is using it, 4 gigs, it's starting to use swap memory. Now, swap memory is in both of these computers. There's what's called the solid state drive, or your SSD. And it is really fast. So these computers, when they run out of memory or system RAM, start to actually use the SSD for memory. They use that as RAM, basically. So they put files there and they move back and forth. Problem is solid state drives have a lifespan on them. So the more they get used, the faster they can deteriorate over time. So what we don't want is the computer using the SSD when it doesn't need to. And as you can see here, basically one piece of software and I'm instantly going into that swap file. So right at this point in time, one piece of software, 570 megs being used. Even when just the OS was launched, I was already using 33 megabytes. This one's 0. Now fast forwarding a little bit, I actually launched, so Affinity Photo, we came in here, we launched Luminar, right there, Luminar. Now we're at 700 megs. Then we launched Chrome. We actually dropped, we're down to about 600 because Luminar we didn't open anything. And then last but not least, we actually ran DaVinci Resolve. And again, we didn't launch a project, we just launched the software. Now we're at 1.71, 1.5 gigs of swap memory. So we've got DaVinci, we've got Luminar, we've got Affinity Photo, we've got Chrome. And we are constantly swapping 1.5 gigs on that hard drive or that solid state drive, which is adding all kinds of wear and tear to it, which is going to, over time, slowly take away some of that lifespan, which we don't want because, as we all know, this is a one-stop shop, and if anything has to get replaced in this, it's not cheap, right? Now over here, this is the 16 gig version, and in that 16 gig version, we launched the same thing. So we've got Affinity Photo running, we've got Chrome running, we come up here, we launch Luminar, we come in, we launch, here's Chrome, here's DaVinci, DaVinci launches, there it is, and look at this down here. Swap used, still nothing, 0 bytes of swap. We now have 9.5 gigs sitting in RAM because we have available RAM for it, right? That RAM is available. So we're not getting any extra activity on that solid state drive. So that wear and tear is being put where it needs to, into memory, versus using that solid state drive. So that's a huge one, especially, for those of us that want to get 3, 4, 5, 6 years out of these computers. That's going to be important. Now, if you're going to be buying one of these computers and you're like, yeah, I'll probably keep it for a year, maybe 2, and then I'll sell it or trade it in or do whatever, then it probably doesn't matter as much, because either way, your solid states should last way longer than that. So that's going to be the person who gets it, their issue. But for you and I that may want to keep this longer, we're going to get that extra performance. Plus, we're not going to be hurting that solid state drive over time. So that's really important. And again, we don't necessarily know what the software requirements are going to be like 2 years from now, 3 years from now. We don't necessarily know what our interests are going to be like. Are we going to change and want to run software X that requires more memory, takes a bigger hit on our computer? So RAM is one of those things, because these machines don't allow us to upgrade later, that we really want to take that into consideration and make sure that we make the right decision when we buy these. So for me, when I bought my 8 gig, I was like, that should be good. But then I really noticed how much that swap file was being used, and that was a little concerning. So I bought the 16 gigs with all knowledge that one of these was going to go back, and it's the 8 gig that's going back. That extra little bit of money, for me, well worth the investment. For you, and maybe it won't be. Now, the other thing, of course, is a lot of people are like, what about hard drive? Well, same idea, right? Hard drive, you know, when we buy this, we buy a portable, for instance, especially, not so much with the Mac Mini, but with the MacBook Pro or the MacBook Air. I run majority of my stuff off of externals, and I'm okay with that, but not everybody likes that. Some people would rather not have anything dangling off the side, and again, I completely appreciate that. I understand exactly where you're coming from. So, you know, I wouldn't get anything that has a 256 gig in it. I'd always want more. So 512 is in both of these. Again, I have a bunch of external solid state drives, which should keep me plenty happy. That's it for this video, guys. I just wanted you guys to see and realize that, you know, I've been using the 8 gig version for probably just over a month now, and it runs great. It does, without question. And if that's what your budget allows, and you're like, you know what, I'm going to use this for web browsing, and I'm going to use it for getting email and stuff like that, then you're probably good. But if you have any thoughts about using it for what it's actually capable of doing, then I definitely hold back or hold off. Save up that extra $200 if you can, US, and go for the 16 gig version, because I do think it's a better investment. And again, if you need extra hard drive, we can always plug one of those into the side. Whereas in regards to RAM, what you get is what you get. So there's no change in that down the road. Okay, guys, I'm going to leave you there. A little bit of information as to why I went the way I did, and that's it. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hit that little bell right there, and we will see you guys next video. All right, my friends, later.